still solely focused on the issue of agriculture and forestry.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
It would certainly be my thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It would certainly be my expectation that that any changes that would increase uptake would be in place for harvest. Harvest, of course, will be rapidly upon us, regardless how cold it feels today. Summer is rapidly approaching, so it would be my hope and expectation that staff would have those prepared, and if possible, like I say, if they don't require a formalized process, if we can do them through regulation, that would be much simpler than an order in council. And so that would be my hope, that they would be in place for this harvest. And certainly we have discussed. It's challenging, and we've had these open discussions, my honourable colleague and I, regarding the potential slippery slope that you head down if you do expand it beyond the agricultural sector and the forestry sector that we have in place right now. I'm always up for suggestions, and I have asked staff to look at whether it could be expanded, and if it could be expanded, into which sectors. And so again, when staff come to me with suggestions, if they've had a chance to look at that in particular, we would certainly consider that. But the priority, I would say, for this round of recommendations to me should be getting the changes in place in order to not lose this harvest season.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would concur. It is important that this program be modified and ensure that it is running smoothly in the initial pilot stage that it was brought out in the agricultural sector and the forestry sector. We need to make sure that we can implement that, and the fact that it's working for Nova Scotians and gives them an opportunity to earn that extra income. But I do think we can, if we look at how this is being implemented in those sectors, that we could spread it across sectors, allowing Nova Scotians on income assistance at very physical ability, various levels, could also earn extra income to allow to support their families and quite honestly provide Nova Scotian businesses with employees that they're looking for, having a real challenge finding. It's happening in the agricultural sector as well as across in the tourism sector. I mean, all Nova Scotians are in small business are having challenges meeting the workforce demands, and we both know it's only growing. The challenges for those companies to find those individuals to fill that work term. So I would agree that we should make sure it's working properly in the agricultural sector, but as we're focusing on that and looking at that, we should be trying to see if it can go across sectors to make sure that Nova Scotians have a chance to find an opportunity to earn that extra income. Just to change gears a little bit, I want to know if the Minister could tell this House a little bit about the housing programs that are available, and she could give the House an indication of whether or not the housing grant part of her budget in this fiscal year has been increased, and whether or not the waiting lists that are attempting to access housing grants across this province, that those people on those waiting lists have any hope this year of seeing their grant approved, brought forward.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And before I get into the housing update, I would state again for the record that we were very pleased with the success of the employment support menu of programs this past year. As members would recall, in my opening statement, I made the reference to the fact that approximately 1,200 individuals had come off, as the expression would be, off income assistance, and for various reasons. But one of the factors certainly was the success of our employment support programs, and so we know that that's a tangible method of measuring the success of those employment support programs, and so we certainly are encouraged by those numbers, and certainly would anticipate that those numbers would remain either at that level or even climb, Mr. Chair, would be welcome. In overall budget for housing, Mr. Chair, We have an increase of approximately $13 million this year in the entire housing portfolio. And we know that the housing portfolio is multifaceted. We know that there is the Canada-Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Program, of which Phase 1 was $37.3 million, Phase 2 was $18.9 million. We know that the trust represented $23 million. We know that the off-reserve trust represented $7.8 million. And then, of course, we have the repair programs, the approximately $18 million in the 13 home repair programs, and that's perhaps more along the lines of what my colleague was looking for, an indication of the success of those programs, because that menu, that portfolio is where we see some of the challenges with our wait lists. We serve approximately 2,500 individuals each year on home repair grants and loans, and of course we are successful with those individuals, but very rapidly our wait lists build back up again. We did have $4 million transferred last year from the Department of Health. This year it was a $3.5 million transfer, I believe. And so while it wasn't a decrease because we weren't having success, it was simply those were the funds that the Department of Health was able to transfer to us this year. So again, not a decrease in funding, but actually an overall increase of approximately $13 million to the housing portfolio as a whole.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Minister, that really what I was focusing on was the RAP programs and the programs that many Nova Scotians apply for of low to modest income to be able to improve their housing stock, to improve their ability to stay in their own home. And I'm wondering if you could just tell this host how much that particular program has increased in this fiscal year.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and in particular on page 4.7 of the estimate book, it's under home ownership and repair programs. And so as my honourable colleague finds his way to that page, I would indicate that the estimate for last fiscal was $14,180,000, and next year's estimate is $14,280,000, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad we made it to that page. I'm curious about the estimate was 14 million and the forecast was 9. Could you explain the increase and what the difference?
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's always a challenge to explain out the dollars that come in a forecast lower than the estimate, but in this case, Mr. Chair, it's quite simply a matter of the availability of contractors, the availability of the individuals of that sector being able to provide the services. The dollars were allocated. The applications were approved, but it was simply a matter of manpower or labor power and not being able to get the repairs or the commitments, the programs fulfilled on the private sector component.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the fact that we have budgeted for the same item this year, what steps have we done internally to make sure that those grant applications are out now and they're being costed, and the fact that Nova Scotians are having an opportunity to access that money? Because it's somewhat disheartening, Mr. Chair, to see that there's that much money left on the table, knowing how many Nova Scotians have in front of the department applications, whether it's for a roof, windows, or any other type of housing repair. Each member of this House, on all sides of this House, I'm sure are getting calls from constituents who've been trying to access this program. So I'm wondering if you could let us know whether or not in this fiscal year we've already began to accept and release contracts to contractors to begin this work so that we don't get caught against the winter or running out of the capacity to be able to do it.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr.
The Honourable the Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to my honourable colleague's question, we did recognize that the contracts weren't being fulfilled as quickly or to the number that we would have liked. And I can indicate to my honourable colleague that we did make adjustments. We went to one quote, and we did ensure that it was one quote with the approval of the inspector to take some of the burden off, to ensure that in those areas where it was not physically possible to get multiple quotes, that we did lessen that burden. And certainly we would be committed to do the same if that were the case. If we find that the contractors and the inspectors are in the same situation, we certainly would recommend that for this year as well. We are receiving applications, and we'll continue to move those as best we can. As my honourable colleague sees, we did not decrease the budget, and so we're anticipating that perhaps some of those changes that we've made, and perhaps a rejuvenation in the contractors or in the ability for those jobs to be done will take place, but we will not reduce the budget.
Thank you. The Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. One of the challenges that has been brought to my office around the program, particularly the RAP program, has been the fact that the permitting of all of these issues, whether you got to go through the building inspector, and of course your inspector doesn't follow that program, and it's up to the client to go and have the building inspector come to make sure that all of the rules and regulations are being followed by the contractor. And at the end of the day, when the client signs off, your department says they're on their own. If there's a challenge around the work that has been done or the challenges with that, because it is up to the client to make sure that the building inspector has done their job, and it's up to the client to make sure that the building inspector has been on site, not your inspector. And there's a real disconnect there. And I don't think it's a question of blaming one over the other. I think it's a question of how do we coordinate that when a Nova Scotian who is fortunate enough to receive a RAP program, they've been in desperate, and they've been waiting for a very long time, and they've been in desperate need of having the repair done. Your inspector is not a qualified building inspector, but they can become a liaison with the building inspectors in the individual areas across Nova Scotia to make sure that that work is being met to the standard of the building code, that the client is not being left high and dry. One of the challenges, once that client signs off on the check, then it's up to them. By signing that check and turning it over to the contractor, they are acknowledging that they are happy with the work. And some of the shortcomings may not show up for a period of time, and no one in the department then is prepared to stand there and provide some support to those Nova Scotians who feel like that they're being left on their own, not knowing any different. You know, as an individual Nova Scotian, they don't understand the building code. They don't understand. They assume that the contractor's meeting the standard that's in front of them, and they also believe if your inspector is signing off, that your inspector is acknowledging that. But we need to make sure that the inspector is a real liaison, in my view, with the building inspectors across Nova Scotia to be able to make sure that each one of these housing programs are meeting provincial standard, and that when we sign off on them as a government, we're signing off on the recommendation of the building inspector who's certified that that project has met the code that we all expect to have done in our homes. And the recipient of the RAP grant knows that if there are challenges, we'll stand beside them because it's been certified by a proper building inspector. There are many challenges for, when you go and hire a contractor, that you meet all of these different codes and all the inspections have been done at due time. They're assuming when you use the word inspector out of your department that that person is making sure that every code in the province of Nova Scotia is being followed, and the work that is being signed off on has met the standards of the building code in the province of Nova Scotia.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And certainly the issue that my honourable colleague raises is one that is a very serious issue. And as I'm sitting here reflecting upon it, I know that we as the department view it as the client being the customer. And therefore, we provide the inspection to certify that it is okay for us to flow funds. But I understand what my honourable colleague is saying, that there needs to be some cooperation or a level of understanding between the two inspections, that if one is ensuring that it's okay to pay, then that level of expectation of quality workmanship should be there. So certainly, I will take that under advisement and take that back to the Deputy Minister and staff and ask that they investigate what that level of cooperation could be to ensure that at the end of the day, the Nova Scotians know that that the work is quality and that the work is of a standard that is acceptable. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable Leader, Liberal Party.
Chair, one of the challenges is the term inspector. And so, of course, a Nova Scotian who applies for a RAP program and receives the funding and receives the program, and receiving the cooperation of your department and receiving the cooperation of the inspectors within your department, are believing that they are going to shepherd them through the permitting issues, going to shepherd them through making sure that the code is being met. And it's not, it's a false assumption. You know, and the problem with that is there are Nova Scotians who have signed off believing that the project met the building code or met the standard, and it's been a year later, it's been 6 months later, and challenges have shown up. And then they're left there by themselves because the department says, well, you transferring the funds to the contractor is an acknowledgement that you are happy with what's been done, you are happy that it's met code and standard. Mr. Chair, I would dare say many people in this House wouldn't know whether or not the contractor meant code or not. Why would we view any other Nova Scotian to be different? And especially when we believe we've entered into a contract with an inspector in the Department of Housing who is helping us shepherd us through that, and by the very term of being an inspector makes us believe they are a building code inspector. They are the person who will be inspecting this project to make sure that it meets every code that the province requires, making sure that at the end of the day, when that contractor drives away and we sign off and hand that check over, that we are in receipt of a quality project. The vast majority of them are top-notch, top-quality projects, but there are some that Nova Scotians are being left in, and it is wasteful on our part, because it is money coming out of your department. It's money that when we're spending it, we want to make sure we're spending it and getting the best value for that dollar, and that because there are so many Nova Scotians who could use the money. We want to make sure that that Nova Scotian who is receiving that check is getting top-quality service to make sure their family's living in a safe environment. So I would encourage you to really find and have that conversation with building inspectors across Nova Scotia to how you can improve that relationship between the actual building inspectors and the inspectors within inside the department to ensure that each and every time a Nova Scotian signs up, because it had got to the point in my constituency office that I was cautioning Nova Scotians and the RAP programs to make sure that you are happy with that project before you sign off on your final draft, because that's your only recourse. If you hold back money, then it seems to get people moving. But immediately once you sign that final draft check, then they're finished. Well, that's not the way Nova Scotians do business. Nova Scotians normally operate in good faith and believe that we'll be there for one another to make sure we shepherd this project to its conclusion. So I would encourage you to look at that, and it is a way to improve service for Nova Scotians and a way to improve that program. And one of the other questions around this program, I'm wondering when the parameters are put out for projects, housing programs and projects, are you looking through an environmental lens? Are you ensuring that the furnace is meeting those standards? Are you ensuring that the insulation is being put in under the environmental lens to improve the operating costs for that Nova Scotian could be lowered if we're going through that environmental lens. And I'm wondering if those projects are there, if your department is doing that through those projects.
Thank you. The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague. And again, the issue around inspectors, we will take back, because it really is, when you look at the personal the personal belief that an inspector would be inspecting for the quality of that job, not inspecting for having had sign-off. So I thank the honourable member for that suggestion, and we will take that back. Discussing in general the repair programs and whether or not they have that whole energy efficiency and environmental requirement. Certainly, we can look to the success of the program that we partner with Conserve Nova Scotia on to provide those 150 homes across the province with upgrades. And we did it in partnership with Conserve for that very reason. And it would be our expectation that we would continue to have success with those types of programs. By the very nature of a lot of the work that we do, windows, doors, those types of repairs, ensuring that leaks, etc. Just by the nature, one would perceive and assume that they would all have that energy efficiency component to them. Whether or not it's written in the policy, I have to acknowledge I don't know at this point. I will check, and certainly if it isn't, I would say that should be a requirement, that be part and part. But by the very nature of the repairs that we make, I would say that that's the intention. But if it isn't written there in words, then I would suggest that we take that back to the department and have it actually part of the contract of the program.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the parts which is not part of the program is that when we're coming in and doing an assessment of a project that an individual Nova Scotian may applying for having a new roof put on, applying to have windows put in, whether or not we are looking at that property through an energy audit and energy efficiency situation, which is limited in terms of very limited expense really to the province if we were looking at those individual projects and from an energy audit perspective, and then being able to say, as we are improving the windows, the roof, that perhaps with an additional small amount of money we've improved the energy efficiency of this home, which in turn would reduce the operating costs for the Nova Scotia family. One of the challenges for many poor Nova Scotia families is the fact they just don't have the ability for insulation, the ability to reduce those operating costs on their home. Much of their income is going through the chimney or out the walls because they just simply do not have the funds to do that maintenance. So it would be interesting to see if as you're reviewing this program, whether or not a simple energy audit could be provided at the same time that contractor was going out to do an estimate on the needs that Nova Scotia was looking for.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as my honourable colleague knows, is well aware that the menu of housing programs would allow that in some instances that certainly could be a component that we would factor in. For example, the RAP. For example, but when we look at the program like FERP, the Provincial Housing Emergency Repair, we would certainly want to ensure that any emergency repairs that we were making, if they were emergency for emergency's sake, we wouldn't want to slow those down. And so I know that's not his intention. But when and where possible, I would suggest that the energy audits be part and parcel of that evaluation. Again, though, I'm not sure of the number of energy auditors in the province, and I wouldn't want to slow down our programs or increase our wait lists by adding an extra regulatory burden to the programs. So when possible, I would suggest that we include those energy audits and that we work to making that part of the normal process of our repair programs.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Chair, and as we all know, the emergency fund programs that are being offered to Nova Scotians, of course, we don't want to slow them down in the very nature of what they're called, the emergency programs. But where possible, these energy audits provide if nothing else, that family and the idea where they can, if they have any additional resources to move to try to reduce, because an energy audit in itself is not a huge expense when we're looking at a project of thousands of dollars to be able to provide an energy audit. And I think we would begin to know if that was part of those programs that you could find, and there are Nova Scotians who are providing energy audits through the federal program, there's some provincial programs. It just makes good sense in terms of dollars we're spending to make sure that the projects we're doing are meeting the very needs of what we're trying to do. This isn't to punish anybody, this isn't to say what we're doing now is not right. It's saying how can we improve what we're doing to make sure that that Nova Scotia family is getting the full benefit, because as you know, and the department knows, once that family receives a grant, they come off, their opportunity to receive one into the future is quite limited, and for quite some years. I think it's 5 years. I think it's 5 years out. So if we can improve that project and even leave them with some minor recommendations that says, here's the project we've completed for your home. If any time within the next 5 years that you find that your ability to be able to want to invest in your property, have some money that you want to put into your property, here's what we believe are a list of 4 or 5 things that would not only improve your property, but would reduce your operating costs on an energy efficient way. You know, I'd hate to have someone come to me and tell me what would be the most energy efficient thing to do to my house, because I don't know. I'd need someone else to help me to tell me. You know, and that's what I think that this envelope would give us an opportunity to be able to do that. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Minister and the staff, and I look forward to asking a few more questions as the night goes on. Thanks very much.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the honourable member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also appreciate this opportunity to ask a few questions of the Minister and her senior staff, so welcome. I'm going to start off in my capacity as the critic for the Disabled Persons Commission. And I searched the budget. I didn't find any budget line for the commission. I understand that the operating costs are lumped in with senior management. So I'm just wondering if you could give me a breakdown of what money is being allocated for the Disabled Persons Commission this coming year and how that compares to last year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome my colleague to the discussion, and certainly look forward to discussing the Disabled Persons Commission and the other various components of the services for persons with disabilities, which of course are of interest to my colleague, as well as various other components of the department. And so, Mr. Chair, the specific line item, of course, is page 4.3, Commissions and Agencies. And Mr. Chair, I would be pleased to indicate the exact dollars for my honourable colleague. And so I have the estimate, the actual, and then I have the budgeted next fiscal. And so if my colleague would care to take a few notes, salaries and benefits, $254,000. Actual, where am I? $254,000. Actual $200,320. Budgeted next fiscal, $261,900. Travel, estimate $34,200. Actual $36,244. Budgeted next fiscal, $53,500. Professional services, estimate $10,100. Actual, $11,134. Budgeted next fiscal, $11,000. Supplies and services, estimate $16,000. Actual, $52,927. Budgeted next fiscal, $18,400. Other, $14,900. Actual, $23,512. Budgeted next fiscal, $12,300. Totals, gross expenditures, estimate $329,200. Actual, $324,136. Budgeted next fiscal, $357,100. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that breakdown. Thank you very much. I'm just curious, I didn't catch the category, but the actual of 52,927, what was that one again?
Thank you. The honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That figure was for supplies and services under budget. Yeah, 16,000 was the estimate, 52,000 was the actual, and then the budget next year, 18,400.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So was that over expenditure related to their move, or?
The honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yes, indeed, my honourable colleague is well aware of their successful move to their new location in Dartmouth, and that is where you will find the moving expenses that were incurred by the Commission.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to say that I think that was an excellent strategy. The Commission is now in the community. It's accessible. It's seen to have some arm's length from the department, and I think it's a win-win for everyone, especially the disabilities community. I want to talk a little bit or ask some questions around the accountability mechanism between the Commission and the Department of Community Services. I understand that the Minister is the chair of the Coordinating Committee of Ministers to which the Disabled Persons Commission reports. So I'm just wondering, how often does this Coordinating Committee meet? And I'm wondering if there are any details on the activity of the Coordinating Committee, and how the Commission reports or passes along information to the department.
Thank you. The honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to echo the comments of my colleague regarding the successful move of the Commission. I concur completely that it is extremely important that the Commission do their work, do their great work at arm's length. And their location in the office, though, was welcome, and it provided for an opportunity to perhaps see members of the Commission on an informal basis, on a regular basis. I think which was very valuable and was nice. I think it's very important that they have their independence at their new location, because they truly are independent of the department. And two, I think it's really important that they are accessible. It was just so very important that they be true to their true nature, and the accessibility of their site is one of those components that I know they find most successful. We, as the minister who is the lead minister on that coordinating committee, there are numerous other departments that take part in those meetings and those briefings. We met, and I need clarification on this. I remember the meeting in June of last year, but I'm not certain, and I know that some might say that that's a senior's moment, and of which I am not, but I'm not sure if there is if we've had another meeting since. So I would need confirmation from staff if we've met since last June. I don't have a briefing on our meeting schedule, but at the meeting of last June, we did have an opportunity to receive information from the Commission, and then to provide an update, what we were doing individually in our own departments that had a connection with the Commission, and how they saw their role as advocate and as a resource and a research for the different departments. And so I know that Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations played a large role in that discussion. I know that Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal had a large piece in that presentation, of course the Department of Health, etc. So we meet The minutes of the meetings certainly are recorded, and feedback is provided to each department on what then the Commission would like to see us do in the future. And so we would look forward to that upcoming meeting. I'm sure that there's one scheduled for June, and I could get that exact date for my honourable colleague when I had an opportunity to look at my schedule in my BlackBerry.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. So it would be fair to say that the coordinating committee meets perhaps once a year with the Commission. I ask that because I have some concerns about two aspects of that. One is the frequency of hearing from the Commission and receiving their input and their recommendations. And the second aspect is just how seriously are their recommendations taken. It's a little difficult to get information on the Commission. They haven't published an annual report in 5 years. And I know they're doing good work. But it's difficult, I think, for people to find out exactly how they're, how they're implementing their plans and acting on their mandate. But I do know that, for example, in June of 2004, the Disabled Persons Commission made 32 recommendations to the department as part of their response to the department's renewal discussion paper on community supports for adults. And I'm just wondering if it would be possible to find out if any or how many of those recommendations are included in the renewal strategy.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And certainly while the formal meeting of the Commission and the Coordinating Committee would be an annual meeting, certainly I wouldn't want to leave my honourable colleague with the impression that the communication with the Commission was only once a year. There are numerous opportunities where we communicate on an infrequent basis. There have been times when I've gone looking for their advice and their input. We certainly rely on the Commission quite heavily when it comes to our housing component, to how we incorporate the various challenges within our housing portfolio to the Disabled Persons Commission. There was an instance where I was investigating the number of self-service versus full-service gas stations across the province, whereby I didn't have the information. It was to the Commission that I turned to help me, to assist me in getting that information. So certainly that informal communication exists and is certainly an opportunity for the ministry as it would be, because I know the Deputy Minister communicates certainly frequently as well with the Commission. So to the point of the 2004 recommendations, I would certainly be pleased to get that information from my honourable colleague, report back what part what part those recommendations played in the renewal process, and certainly bring that back to the legislature, and if not specifically during this sitting and this estimates discussion, but to my honourable colleague at our earliest convenience.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that would be very important because I would consider the Disabled Persons Commission one of the most critical advisory bodies to your department in the whole area of disabilities issues. And certainly they see as their mandate representing the over 150,000 persons with disabilities in this province, including the approximately, I think it's 5,000 clients that are served directly through other programs in your department. So I think it'd be important to get that broad perspective. I guess the reason I'm wondering if any of those recommendations motivated decisions by the department is the fact that it seems the department is turning back on its commitment regarding deinstitutionalization in the province. And certainly a couple of announcements within the last couple of years, the $19 million going into Riverview, and and the $3 million going into the renovations of the Sackville Cobequid, former Cobequid Centre, raise concerns. I've had the privilege of attending a couple of sector forums, all-day forums on this topic where experts and resource people from across Canada have been brought in to discuss this issue with our sector here in Nova Scotia. And the information was extremely interesting. And I must say, everything I heard, both formally from the resource people and certainly informally through the discussions, seems to indicate that we would be going backwards by doing this. So I'm just wondering, since the Disabled Persons Commission has come out so strongly in support of deinstitutionalization, why is the department continuing with that mode of providing accommodations and residential placements in this province?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to certainly give credit where credit is due, the Nova Scotia League of Equal Opportunities, as well as the Disabled Persons Commission, Mr. Chair, were absolutely fundamental key players in the government's decision to put into this year's budget the additional $300,000 of core funding for the Abilities Foundation for the Wheelchair Program. And Mr. Chair, I think that speaks volumes about the influence, if you will, or the ability for NSLEO and for the Disabled Persons Commission to influence government action and government spending, because that $300,000 of core funding, of course, is indeed just that, core funding every year. And so that is very important that we recognize that it was in large part due to the work of the Disabled Persons Commission and Nova Scotia LEO, who were instrumental in helping to guide government policy. And so I certainly would mention that in response to to my honourable colleague's concern about their ability to influence government policy. Now, Mr. Chair, there are a few topics which provoke such extreme ends of emotion as the entire issue of the continuum of supports that need to be provided in our community for our clientele that would fall under the services for persons with disabilities. And you know, Mr. Chair, I have immersed myself in the complexities involved in this part of the department, because indeed the word complex is barely even justifiable for some of the challenges that are faced within that sector. And certainly the continuum of services is extremely important. It would be irresponsible, I believe, as a ministry, as a department, as a government, to turn our backs on any of those who fall within that continuum, Mr. Chair. And that's why it's so very important that we recognize that the complex cases are valuable. The complex cases require us to challenge ourselves and to look for best practice and to look for creative solutions, Mr. Chair. I believe that this government has demonstrated its understanding of the need to provide for independence and community supports, Mr. Chair. Everything from our programs that involve alternate family support to independent living support to direct family support, Mr. Chair, ensuring that individuals are supported in their communities. And as well, Mr. Chair, when my honourable colleague mentions the $19 million renovation at Riverview, I think it's extremely important that we all acknowledge that the addition of the community homes that are part of that renovation is key to that continuum of support, because it is, along with renovating the wing and ensuring that Riverview is a quality, safe environment for those very vulnerable Nova Scotians who call Riverview home, we also want to ensure that the continuum of services that we provide to those folks is available to them. And so we're very pleased with that addition of the community homes that will provide for that independence for those individuals who are able to. And Mr. Chair, do you know, the issue of Cobequid and the necessity for us to have a home here in the Halifax Regional Municipality that is able to care for those very complex needs of those Nova Scotians who will call Cobequid home under the service provider quest. Mr. Chair, again, it's our responsibility to ensure that the quality level of care that we provide for those Nova Scotians is indeed just that, a quality level of care. And so while we might disagree on the importance of that continuum, Mr. Chair, we are very pleased with the government's commitment to provide $6 million this year in our budget, an additional $6 million for the services for persons with disabilities, to ensure that that continuum is spread out across the province. And I look forward to bringing more of those community homes and more of those independent programs to Nova Scotians.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to stand here and lecture the minister, but I am aware that every review, every report done in this province in the last 15 years, the experience and best practices and decision-making of almost every province and territory in Canada differs with the view just stated by the minister. And isolating persons with disabilities in larger institutions is actually taking away some of their civic rights as citizens in our province. And I would urge the minister and her senior officials to review this kind of expenditure. It's going backwards. It's not serving the people it's meant to serve, and it's just caused so much worry and upset for the disabilities community in our province. It's actually, you know, there actually could be some legal implications here if one wanted to look at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So I suggest that this is a major philosophical shift, and it would really upset me if I thought we were turning our backs on these citizens of Nova Scotia just to contain costs in this area. It would really, really upset me, and I'm not suggesting that's the case, but certainly it's been suggested to me by people who know a lot more about this issue than I do. If you wanted to go back and take a look at the report of the collaborative strategic planning process for adult residential centres and regional rehabilitation centres, the report of the Minister's Advisory Committee on Services to Children with a Mental Handicap, the review of the Children's Training Centres, the establishment of the early intervention and in-home support programs. I could go on and on and on, but certainly a lot of the national work that's been done by very valued members and leaders within our own disabilities community here in Nova Scotia on the national scene, they all reaffirm that we need to be going towards smaller homes in the community where people are more fully engaged as citizens and better supported and more able to enjoy their rights, their quality of life and their rights as citizens. I want to go back and the minister raised the issue of the wheelchair program that's being administered by the Abilities Foundation. I understand that in year one of operation, $1 million was given to operate that program, but that the bulk of the money went to provide wheelchairs for clients of the department. What is, when you talk about the $300,000, is that additional? Is that new money to the program? And does it have the same restriction, which limits most of the use of that, of the distribution of those monies to clients of the department?
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I respect the fact that my honourable colleague will refrain from lecturing me on the importance of providing that continuum. And Mr. Chair, in that same vein of respect, I will respect my honourable colleague and not continue the dialogue on a difference of opinion. For Mr. Chair, I will not apologize for meeting the needs of Nova Scotians, and certainly I know that my honourable colleague would not expect me to do that. I would like to indicate for the House that the philosophical shift that we are seeing in the services for persons with disabilities, that philosophical shift and that ability for individuals to maintain their independence, for the ability for individuals to use our programs such as the alternate family support community residence, which Mr. Chair has 195 clients, or the independent living support supervised apartments with 607 Nova Scotians, or the small option, 624 Nova Scotians, or indeed, Mr. Chair, the direct family support, which includes children and adults, 1,750 Nova Scotians. So, Mr. Chair, those Nova Scotians certainly do appreciate the continuum, along with those other individuals, as I mentioned earlier, who may find themselves as more complex case, who need the additional resources, Mr. Chair, that we provide. Now, that philosophical shift that I spoke of, Mr. Chair, within the services for persons with disabilities is one that I know the good folks at the department are extremely pleased to be able to move forward. For these folks in the department have the best at heart, Mr. Chair, for those Nova Scotians who are part of that program. And so as we look at changing from how an individual, or shifting the idea of where an individual might fit in the continuum, we're actually looking at that very individual themselves and deciding what works best for them. And so that shift toward looking at the needs for the individual is one that is extremely important, valuable, and will be part of the move forward by our department. Now, specifically, Mr. Chair, to the increased funding for the Abilities Foundation, we certainly recognize the need for this. And since 2005, our department did provide $1.5 million to the Abilities Foundation to administer the 2 wheelchair recycle programs, helping children and adults with physical disabilities. And certainly we're pleased to be able to continue our partnership with the Abilities Foundation in this, as we invest the $300,000 in core funding, making it easier for children and adults with physical disabilities to access a wheelchair. And so the Abilities Foundation is the folks that we look to for the expertise. We fund and funnel the money through to the Abilities Foundation, and it is through them that the recipients are in receipt of the wheelchairs, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable, the member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to move on, but I am confused because is it not true that the department has put a restriction on the distribution of those monies, that clients of the department have to be served first? And I understand that 60% of the first million that was allocated to that pilot program in April 2006 was used on Department of Community Services income assistance recipients.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and again, through the capable folks at the Abilities Foundation, the dollars are flowed through them, Mr. Chair, and of course there is an income tested component, but it is not a requirement that the individuals who are in receipt of the wheelchairs are income assistance clients, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
I'm going to be sharing my time with the member from Halifax Citadel, but before I do, I want to ask the Minister briefly. There seems to be a moratorium on housing or residential options and work programs in this province, and has been for over or approximately 10 years, except for a few minor exceptions. When is that moratorium going to be finished? And what plans have you to expand the residential options in other parts of the continuum?
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and we've certainly seen the success, Mr. Chair, of the day programming that is provided from one end of this province to the other. A key component to the program, and certainly, Mr. Chair, that is a piece that is all part of the renewal and the Services for Persons with Disabilities plan that again, as I said, the government has committed $6 million in this budget, and we'll be pleased to get that budget through, Mr. Chair, and be able to flow those dollars through to the various components of the SPD program, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The honourable member for Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
I will now share my time with the member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you. Thank you. The chair will now recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Seeing this. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to confine my remarks mostly to my critic area of the child and youth strategy, youth issues in general, the Nunn Commission and its recommendations as they relate to the department, and to some constituency questions. Maybe I should start with my constituency questions and then get them out of the way before we move to the child and youth strategy. Very specifically, I have a question about metro housing and seniors. Last year around this time, I was asking about the provision of superintendents in seniors' homes and manors, and I was told at that time that there was a hiring process underway and that there would be superintendents in those buildings. But over the year, there's been some considerable backsliding, and now the seniors are being told that there will be no superintendents hired, in fact, but there will be some security in the evenings, but no superintendents as such. And I've seen an increase in the number of seniors coming with questions and issues that occur during the day, and I'm wondering if there is a conscious policy adopted in metro housing that says there will no longer be full-time superintendents living in buildings.
Thank you. The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I welcome my honourable colleague to the discussion, and I'm pleased to discuss some constituency issues, because I know that those are always the ones that are the most valuable in these debates. Sometimes are those constituency issues. Mr. Chair, I certainly am not aware of any shift in supervisors versus security in our seniors complexes. I will take it under advisement and ask staff to please check with the Metro Housing Authority to provide us with an update, and I will certainly provide that to my honourable colleague at our earliest convenience. But it's not my understanding that there was a shift in that, so I will verify that and get back to the honourable member.
Thank you. The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that offer. If I can make that question more specific, then if you would look into the situation, Madam Minister, at Joe Howe Manor in my constituency. There has been a considerable delay, and last month I was called because an ambulance had to wait for half an hour to get into the building to serve a senior. Mind you, this is information I got from a resident and not through the authorities, but I think it is something that needs to be looked into, and I would like an answer to that question about Joe Howe, and I thank you for your offer. I also had a question about Spencer House. I did ask you last year, and you were very kind enough, Madam Minister, to, through you, Mr. Chair, to come to Spencer House and to look at the facilities, and as I recall, you were very impressed with the services being offered, but they haven't really seen any result from that meeting, and I'm wondering if if they can expect some additional support, because they're serving a growing clientele, they're providing more services, and at the same time there hasn't been that similar growth. I know the minister has been encouraging seniors to, to live in the constituency, and live out, in their communities. And this is an opportunity to demonstrate that commitment, I think, by providing some additional support. And I'm wondering if there is a strategy in place for meeting the needs of places like Spencer House. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Find it and I'll give it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank my honourable colleague for the very nice invitation and the very nice visit that we did have at Spencer House. It was a delight to be there and interact with the seniors and see firsthand the good work that's going on there. And Mr. Chair, it never ceases to amaze me the work that is being done. And I know it's not the same category of spot, but I often talk about the family resource centres and how our family resource centres are able to stretch a penny beyond what most people can imagine. And I think the same thing can be said about places like Spencer House and other spots around the province who take those dollars that we provide to them and stretch them to provide the absolute maximum services and programs for those Nova Scotians who take advantage of those services and programs. So while we always would like to be able to do more, and I always have that opportunity where I say, is it enough? Would we like to be able to do more? No, it's never enough. And yes, we would like to be able to do more. I certainly am pleased that this year, as a budget item, that we received in the Department of Community Services, a 3% increase for some of those community grants and organizations that have not received an increase in funding from us in some years now. As a result of that, and on successful passage of the budget, we will see a 3% increase to Spencer House for their funding, and that exact dollar figure would be that they would have gone approximately, $1,500? About approximately $1,800, Mr. Chair, as part of that budget line item.
Thank you. The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a third question, somewhat of a constituency question, but a more general question, and that's about the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program. I note from the estimates at page 4.2 that the estimate for 2007-2008 was 348 million. In fact, only 339 was spent, and next year there'd be less estimated, and I'm wondering why that program is being cut.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry, I was getting the information because I was on a different page than my honourable colleague. Could he repeat the question so I knew exactly which line item he was referring?
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
It's always important that the minister and the person asking the question be on the same page. Employment Support and Income Assistance. I'm looking at the estimates for 2007-2008. And in 2007, the estimate was 347,902,000. And 2008, it's 344,881,000. That's at page 4.2 in the estimates.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And on the surface, one would never like to see a decrease in budget, but it's because of the success of the decline in the caseload that we would see the decline in the anticipated budget line item, Mr. Chair. So while we see individuals come off, as we would call it, coming off of the income assistance caseload, we see those dollars reflected in the line item. Thank you.
The Honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some people say, and I'm referring here to particular groups in my constituency, that the decline in the caseload has been a result of a changing interpretation and application of the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program. And let me ask specifically about the Career Seek program, where a great many spaces in theory were open, but in practice there were only 2 or 3. Now, since then, the minister has revised that program to make more people eligible, and I'm wondering what happened to those people who applied last year. I believe there are close to 50 people who applied last year and didn't get in, ostensibly because the conditions were too onerous for application, and what the current take-up rate is for the Career Seek program.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And though there are numerous reasons for the caseload decline, I would never pretend that they are all phenomenal successes for one reason only. There are numerous reasons for that decline. Economic factors certainly factor in. Relocation would certainly factor in, and transferring to other programs, I would acknowledge, would certainly factor in as well. So there are various reasons why. In particular to the Career Seek pilot program that my honourable colleague raises, it was one that I expressed disappointment with the uptake in the beginning, and we realized that there were numerous barriers that were in place. And because of those barriers, we did not have the uptake we were looking for. So we've made some changes. We made changes that decreased the length of time people needed to be on income assistance before they could apply for the program. We made changes related to the continued income assistance for costs related to shelter and personal allowance, so they could continue to receive those. Certainly, we broadened the definitions of the types of the undergraduate programs. We made a more aggressive attempt at a comprehensive awareness and promotional campaign. We took that cap off that we discussed. It was an artificial cap because the removal of that, we certainly didn't have anywhere near the 200, and so we took that cap off. And certainly we made sure that we recognize the unique needs of re-entry of adult learners. And so all of those changes were made in hopes that we will now have a greater uptake. Of course, the academic year was already in play, and so we did not have the uptake. We are anticipating that uptake to be increased this fall, September 2008. I do not have a figure at this point because our frontline caseworkers are still gathering information. They've gone back to the individuals that were not successful the first time around, and as well, since we have broadened the requirements, we recognize that there will be an increase, and we've done a better job of communicating it. We recognize there will be an increase in the interest in the program, and so as soon as those numbers become available, I'll be pleased to report to this House should we be in session, or report to Nova Scotians as those numbers become available. But certainly be our expectation that we would have a much more successful uptake for the fall of 2008.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Could the minister tell us then, Mr. Chair, how many applications have been received to date? I understand that there might be particular reasons for there not being a flood of applications, but I'm wondering if there has been any evidence of any improvement. In part, I'm concerned because there is a perception that the Employment Support and Income Assistance Program, particularly Regulation 67, discriminates against students who want to go to post-secondary institutions to improve themselves. And there's a concern that discrimination, that prejudice against students in post-secondary institutions is still there. And it hasn't really been dealt with, even though the paperwork may be a little different.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, I do not have the number of applications at my fingertips. I can certainly put the call out amongst our staff who would, now that the academic year has finished and we will be moving into the next phase, certainly put the call out to the front line and the area administrators to find out what type of uptake, what the numbers may look like, and I'm pleased to ask staff to get a preliminary figure for the House and report that back to the member as soon as that's available. Mr. Chair, in particular, respecting regulation number 67, I would have to take that under advisement and ask staff to have a look at that to ensure that that is not the case, that indeed Career Seek is meant to do just as we have laid out, that it's meant for those who are ready and able to participate in a post-secondary program to be able to do that, and removing those barriers that prevented that certainly was our intention. So if there are continued barriers, I would appreciate hearing those from all of my colleagues in the House, and certainly I'll have a look at regulation number 67 in particular.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I thank the minister for that answer, and maybe if I can use that as a segue into my youth policy questions, maybe starting with one of the promises in the department's business plan 2008-2009 at page 18. The department promises to strengthen the child and youth social policy research capacity, working with policy research personnel to build a working relationship with other foundations, evaluation criteria, and establish mechanisms for tracking strategy outcomes. And if you don't mind, I'll move from that to ask you specifically about some of the tracking that is being done on the strategy for the children and youth, the children and youth strategy. And again, I applaud the minister for establishing these pilot projects. They seemed very promising at the time, and some of them sound very promising. So this is not so much meant by way of criticism as it's meant by it's just to see where this is going and where you've been. Now, the strategy says it'll be helpful for vulnerable children and at-risk youth. And I'd like to know a little bit more about the Place to Belong program that's happening in Annapolis, Hants, and Digby County, and Eastern Shore. The program promises to use non-traditional approaches like art and drama and music and recreation. And ironically, as the minister knows, these are specifically the programs that are being cut in school, and they're now being used as a social policy tool. And I'm wondering where we are with that, and what evidence do we have of any success, or what needs improvement there?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank my honourable colleague for the other questions, but thank him for the shift into the child and youth strategy, because indeed it really was a phenomenal and I believe a very sincere and tangible example of the commitment of this government and of the commitment to Nova Scotians. Certainly, Justice Nunn provided us with an opportunity to do a better job at what we're doing. And we appreciate the opportunity. We accepted all of the recommendations, and we accepted them knowing that it would not be an easy task. We also accepted them knowing that it would not be fixed overnight. And so the support from all members in this House for that strategy certainly has been welcome. We appreciated the support at the launch of it, and we appreciate the support as we continue to invest in it. Of course, the budget this year has been increased $2 million to ensure the successful rollout and the successful implementation of those programs. The 10 initiatives, which involve over 25 partners, is a huge undertaking. Those 25 partner agencies are really the key component to ensuring success of those 10 initiatives. And so the program specifically that my honourable colleague mentioned, we do have the 4 regional specialists in place. They're working to coordinate the work of the strategy, the exact rollout. Of course, my honourable colleague knows full and well the sites were Annapolis, Hants, Digby, and Eastern Shore, and so we're working with those community partners to ensure that those programs that were laid out are successful, and then the additional dollars fill the gaps for the rest of the communities in Nova Scotia who weren't part of that initial rollout in the beginning, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, I have read the Child and Youth Strategy, so I do know the background and the context in which it was developed, particularly as it relates to the Nunn inquiry. But I was really asking more about the social policy research capacity and whether or not we have evaluation criteria for the pilots and initiatives of the child and youth strategy, where there's a mechanism for tracking these strategic outcomes. And specifically, I was asking how that applies to a place to belong and whether or not we do have the criteria in place and whether we do have a mechanism for tracking it and what the outcome of that tracking has shown.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the, in particular reference to the social policy research, the 08-09 budget would be $90,000 for that component, and that will be worked through. We are working at signing service agreements now with our community agencies, with our partners. And in particular, the question regarding a method of verification will be part and parcel of that service contract that will be signed.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some questions about the other parts of the business plan. You're talking about establishing working relationships both between the various departments that are partnering in the Child and Youth Strategy and between the Child and Youth Social Policy Committee. I must say that I've been disappointed over the last several months. I've been trying in Halifax Citadel, along with the business commissions, to help establish an outreach and navigator program in the Capital District. And we have called the office coordinating that strategy several times, asking for advice and asking for someone to sit in on those meetings. And we have not even received a phone call. And so it's been disappointing to see, that level of response when, reputable groups in a constituency are trying to do things for youth at risk on the streets. And I'm wondering if perhaps the program is just taking too long in getting up and running. And we really haven't seen anything in the Capital District of concrete accomplishments or even a presence.
The Honourable Minister for Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague raises the point that is often frustrating for all of us in the House, and that is the speed at which great initiatives move forward. And so we do have these wonderful initiatives in the 25 partnering agencies. But again, Mr. Chair, I know that there is some frustration regarding the speed or the rollout. Again, Mr. Chair, we want to make sure that we get it right. We don't move too fast. We don't move too rapidly to defeat the purpose. However, having said that, I do want to let my honourable colleague know that the navigators will be located in our district offices, as indicated, Halifax, Sydney, Truro, and Kentville. Those jobs are being classified currently and will be posted soon. Having said that, Mr. Chair, I would ask my honourable colleague to provide me with a contact, a number, a date, and I would be more than pleased to arrange for someone to come and meet with the group that my honourable colleague mentioned to ensure that those cracks are filled now, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you very much. Again, I appreciate the minister's offer to help us with that, to make that program get underway quickly. I do have a question about early intervention programs. The minister knows that this lies at the heart of the Child and Youth Strategy. And also at the heart of the NUN inquiry. In looking at the estimates in supplementary detail at page 4.6, I see that the estimate for 2007-2008 for early intervention programs was where are we? It's, in any event, that there has been no great change in the commitment of resources, to those early intervention programs. And I'm wondering why that is, given the certainly professed importance that the department has placed on early intervention programs. Should we not see that in the estimates?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And And certainly, the early intervention program funding is absolutely a key component. We all know the importance of that early detection, that early ability to successfully intervene. And indeed, Mr. Chair, in mid-March, we increased funding to the early intervention programs by approximately $46,000. So that was in addition to the 07-08 budget amount of $2.3 million. So there was an additional increase there, and certainly that's reflective of the importance and the value of those early intervention programs, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. I have an article that I'm holding here from the Herald, dated March 20th, 2008, and it talks about Kelly Swinburne, whose daughter Brittany has turned 16, and she's had a history of issues, some of them dealt with through community services, and she says that her daughter now, because she's turned 16, no longer has the support of the Department of Community Services, the only ones who are able to get her daughter back into secure care. As soon as she went into the Adolescent Center program, Community Services terminated her file. She was no longer their responsibility, and I was kind of apprehensive about that, she says, and I called her social worker, and she said, well, the file's closed. Could you scratch out QP? So I'm wondering, what can be done for cases like that, where people, essentially will fall between the cracks? It's supposed to be what the child and youth strategy is designed to deal with.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I know that my honourable colleague raises the issue to talk about programming, because certainly I would not be prepared to speak to the specifics of any case, be they in the public spectrum or not. And I know my honourable colleague respects and understands the need for that. Specifically, when it pertains to child welfare issues, as we've discussed time and time again in this House, Mr. Chair, and I know that my honourable colleague from Dartmouth North is, as I said the other day, passionate to the point of personal care, Mr. Chair, that even he acknowledges sometimes keeps him up far too late at night than should. But, Mr. Chair, when it comes to child welfare issues, I would ask that my honourable colleague give me the opportunity to speak specifically outside of the realm of the public in response to the specific services that we could provide to an individual in any case to ensure that that individual remains in receipt of the best possible care that we can provide. So I would encourage my honourable colleague to have that discussion with me so that we could ensure that those answers are provided. Thank you.
Honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Again, Mr. Chair, I thank the Minister. My question was really a question of policy, whether or not that in fact was the policy, and it appears to be the policy. And the case is just an example of a problem in the policy that the child and youth strategy is supposed to address. I have a question about some of the data about the general increase in children in care. The figures show that the number of children taken into permanent care and custody of the minister since 2004 is 8.6%. And I'm just wondering what accounts for that increase, given that earlier the minister was saying that economic conditions and social conditions have improved and numbers have fallen elsewhere in other areas, but here the number of children taken into care has in fact increased.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the issue of youth in care is one that is challenging we aren't alone in this jurisdiction. It's challenging for other jurisdictions. I made reference the other day to indeed a meeting I was attending with my colleagues from across the country, and we began to discuss the issue of child welfare and the challenges, the increasing challenges that come along with the child welfare portfolio. And unfortunately, we all were experiencing those same challenges. We were experiencing an increase in the number of youth in care. We were experiencing an increase in the complexity of the individuals, the complexity of the challenges of those individuals. And while there is no magic answer to how we deal with that, we know that here in Nova Scotia, and I was pleased to provide for my colleagues some of the programs that we are rolling out through the child and youth strategy, because at the end of the day, Mr. Chair, it is about recognizing that the challenge is there and then putting those programs in place in the beginning, at that early stage. And through our commitment to the strategy, it would be our hope and certainly my hope for the future that we would see those numbers decline, we would see those numbers decrease. However, Mr. Chair, until that's the case, until that is the reality, we will continue to provide the care needed for those children in care. They don't come with a simple recipe for how to solve the issues, and certainly the child welfare staff and my colleagues across the country tell me that it is increasingly more challenging to deal with the complexities. And so we have to be prepared to look, if I can use the expression, look outside the box and to try and be creative and to be proactive and be on the ground and ensure that the work that health promotion and protection is doing, ensure that the work that the Department of Health through the mental health initiatives, to ensure that all of those in partnership with what we do provides the foundation so that at the end of the day we can see those numbers decrease. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. The time for the NDP caucus has expired. I will now recognize from the Liberal caucus the honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Thank you very much. And I welcome the opportunity to have some questions and dialogue with the Minister of Community Services. And thank you for being here today to take our questions and go through these very important stages. I wanted to start, I've got quite a few questions, and I know the member from Halifax Citadel said some of them are constituency related, and I will say that's true too. For me, a lot of them come up in our offices as we're doing our work and advocating for our constituents. But I'm also interested in some of the financial aspects of the department as well. So this one is of importance to everyone. I wanted to go to the housing allowance. And just one of the notes I had was the monthly basic income assistance rates, which start with the maximum for shelter for a person. It says single parent, one child, $570, and single person under special circumstances, no dependent, $535. I'm not sure if we have more children how much higher it goes, but I don't think anybody gets much more than about $650. Perhaps you can correct me when we get there because it's not on this list. But my real point is that it's very difficult in HRM to find a place to live for that amount of money for shelter. And it's probably no surprise to the minister that people are using every other bit of money. They're using their money for personal allowance. They're using their food money. They're using any of their special needs money to supplement the income. My riding has quite a variety of housing available, lots of apartments, over 8,000 apartment units in Clayton Park. And I can tell you there's scarcely any under 700. That would be almost the lowest you would find. And it's just, you know, it just seems like we're not in touch with reality if we're providing a basic rent allowance that doesn't match what's available. It was mentioned during the Poverty Forum that was held a couple of years ago that I think one of the recommendations that came from that, at least it was one we discussed, was that there should be a different rate depending on where you live, because the market is very different. It may be that in New Ross you might find a rental for $600 a month. It is possible, you know, some of the rural areas that don't have as many people available to rent, and the markets would allow for that. But I just feel that in almost every corner of HRM, I see the members from Dartmouth nodding as well. Almost everywhere in our city, it's very difficult to find anything under $700 or $800 a month when you're talking about a 2 or 3 bedroom. And we're talking here about families. As you know, there are many families on assistance. And I find it very difficult when I'm sitting down with people and they're showing me their budget and explaining to me some of their difficulties. It really all ties back to that basic roof over their head. If they can't afford that, they're getting their power cut off. They're not able to pay their other bills, and they just get deeper and deeper into a hole. And it's really, really difficult. So I wondered if the minister could let me know if there's any move afoot to look at differentials by region, or possibly to look at an increase in that amount. I would like to say I'm in favor of differentials.
Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I welcome my honourable colleague to the discussion this afternoon. And if I may, I want to recognize that my honourable colleague is certainly one of the many colleagues in the House who, when she has issues, is always prepared to bring them and deal with them on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the benefit of her constituents is achieved, and that it truly is about those constituents that she advocates for. So I wanted to make that public and say thank you to her for that. In particular, when it comes to the income assistance rates and the shelter allowance rates, although I know my honourable colleague knows I don't need to repeat it, but I do for the record that the income assistance rate this year will increase again. So we will see a 15.6% increase over the last 5 years with the passage of this budget. Again, it's a recognition, it's a tangible recognition that the department understands that the challenges out there are great and increasingly more challenging for families every day. And so it is a commitment that we made to increase annually, and we intend to fulfill and follow through on that commitment. The issue of shelter is one that does cause me some concern, the shelter allowance. It was brought up earlier on in the discussion. And we had some discussion and some debate on how we might better allow for that shelter allowance to be spent. I have a couple of concerns when it comes to the shelter allowance. As we've said before, absolutely no disrespect to landlords, but I wouldn't want an increase in the shelter allowance to simply equate an increase in the rent, which would then simply equate to an increase going to the landlord. So one of the suggestions that was made last week was that we look at the Residential Tenancies Act and see if there isn't some ability within the Residential Tenancies Act to ensure that when there is an increase in the shelter allowance, that it doesn't go directly to an increase in the rent. So that's something that I referenced last week, that I would have a discussion with the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia Municipal Relations, to see if there's some way to ensure that that doesn't automatically occur. However, to my honourable colleague's point about a differential or an increase, it would be my expectation that certainly will be a key component to the poverty reduction strategy. I can't imagine that isn't being discussed, and that won't be part of those recommendations. And so we will have a look at that. If indeed it is part of those recommendations, have a look at that to see if it is a market value or to see if it is a differential. And certainly we'll take all of those considerations under advisement and certainly ensure that we include that in our response to those recommendations from the poverty reduction strategy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure I fully understood what the Residential Tenancies Act can contribute to this, and maybe I will ask for the minister to, well, you can take some of your time and explain it if you like, because what I'm saying is here in Metro, we know what the base rate is. Actually, at the moment in my riding, there's more available apartments than there have been. Up to now, there's been a very tight market. I think there are more available. And I think that the market will determine where that rate will settle. And right now, you could have a third party tell you what the market is to determine what makes sense. So maybe you could explain what you thought the Act would have to do with that.
Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague for the opportunity to expand upon that. The issue that was raised last week was that there have been cases where the experience has been when an increase in the shelter allowance was made to the individuals, In some instances, the landlords then raised the rent that reflected that increase. Therefore, the gap continued to stay the same, and those individuals that were using their income assistance personal allowance to make up that difference were still finding themselves in a position where they needed to fill that gap with other resources. And so that was the issue that was raised, and that's what I'm looking into, or that's what I'm asking the Minister of Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations to look into. Is there some ability through the Residential Tenancies Act to ensure that when that increase is put in place, that there is not automatically an increase in the rent that would continue to have that gap incur? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to go some to the federal program on housing that has been in place for some time for affordable housing, and I know there were some millions of dollars. I don't have it before me, but I know the minister knows and her staff know the amount. I'd like to know if you could tell me how much is currently available to Nova Scotia but unspent. It was a multi-year program, I believe, to stimulate the building or provision of affordable housing. Would that be, hopefully you have it there. Thank you.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my honourable colleague is referring to the affordable housing program that was the Canada-Nova Scotia program, and $56.2 million was the final figure. Of course, Phase 1 broke down to 34, I believe it was, and Phase 2 was 18. At the end of the day, we have over 1,070 affordable housing units that have been created or preserved for Nova Scotian families and individuals. And at the end of this fiscal, Mr. Chair, we will have exhausted the $56.2 million.
The honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Yeah. And I thank the minister for that. Now, Mr. Chair, most of the information I have on this has come from public accounts meetings that I've attended as a member of that, so I don't have it at my fingertips. But the initial announcement of this program, the department and the government boasted of 1,500 units that were going to be, initially were going to be built. We were going to add 1,500 units to our stock. And over time, there were several more different press releases that came out and announcements that came out that scaled it down so that it was, yes, they were going to be renovated or improved or refurbished or maybe a few new ones built. So can the minister break down for us how many units were built and how many have been public housing that's been improved? Because I know the state of public housing needs improvement as well. Thank you.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my honourable colleague. Certainly some of the factors that I know my honourable colleague is well aware of. We here in Nova Scotia have some of the oldest housing stock in the country. We also, Mr. Chair, and which creates its own challenges. We also know from cross-jurisdictional research and information that it's not always a matter of money most wisely spent building new units when refurbishing and renovations can take place. We also know that here in Nova Scotia, a large part of our success has been the rent supplements, which has provided housing as well for Nova Scotians. So I'm pleased to provide for my honourable colleague a breakdown by region and a breakdown by program if she would so care, or perhaps just the central region. I'm not sure which my honourable colleague would like, but I do have it broken down per region, and I do have it broken down per program. So the whole proviso or just the I would be happy to give a total number per region, and then I can table the chart or give it to my colleague afterwards. So we have the new rental program, we have the rental preservation program, we have the new home purchase, we have the home preservation, and we have the rent supplement. So in each of those categories, and I'll go a little bit slower because that wasn't very fair. It's hard to write when you're going that fast. So new rental across the province would be 547 units completed or under construction. Rental preservation would be 116 units. New home purchase, 6 units. Home preservation, 245 units. And rent supplement, 70 units. So that would be a total of 1,069 at the end of the programming, and we also have 85 that are in the planning stage currently, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Yes. Can I just ask, the 85 in addition to all of those would add up to 1,070? Yes. Okay, just for the total, so 185 still outstanding. I understand. Actually, there's more elements to the program than I thought. Under the rent supplement, my question would be this, and I understood that of the millions of dollars we were getting from the federal government, some of it is going to 10-year, I guess they're rent subsidies to provide a supplement to lower income people living in new apartment buildings. And in fact, there may even be arrangements with builders that a certain percentage of them will be supplemented by the Department of Community Services. I don't believe these are people on social assistance. I think they're low-income supplements. Could you give me a rundown on that program, please?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and indeed, my honourable colleague is correct. The rent supplement is a program that is available not only. It is low-income Nova Scotians, not public housing per se, and so the breakdown of the 70 units per rent sup. I must admit, I do not have the exact community locations at my fingertips right now, but I certainly would be happy to get those from my honourable colleague.
The honourable member for Halifax, Clayton Park.
Yes, I would very much like to have that. And can I ask for a clarification that these 70 units that are being counted are really going to be finished after a period of years, because your commitment to supplement the rent on those units is for a fixed period of time? You know, my concern, Mr. Chair, in terms of that aspect of using the federal dollars to provide shelter for low-income Nova Scotians is that it isn't long-term. I'm not sure if it's 10 years. That seems like a long time, but we're not really developing or providing something long-term that's tangible. We've been given millions of dollars by the federal government to provide some homes. We have the oldest housing stock in the country. We have some public housing that, like many other provinces, I know it's not unique here, but some of the public housing is extremely substandard, and it does need that improvement. If we improve the substandard public housing, we'd have much better homes for people on the long term. That we need to invest and maintain what we've got, because like any homeowner, if you don't look after what you've got, it very quickly deteriorates and becomes major, in that investment is lost. So I have some philosophical difference or problem even with the rent subsidy idea, and I'd just like to understand longer how much time people will get that subsidy for, or what is the nature of the arrangement with the developers that are building a building. Do we have a commitment to them for a period of time so they will always maintain units? Do we help them pay for the building in the first instance? I'm not sure how you do that. So there's a couple of questions in there to the minister. One of them would be going back to, if I'm a developer and building a new building, can I come to the Department of Community Services and allocate a number of those units that I say will be lower in, sort of preserved for lower income, and you help offset the cost of building? That would be one question. Is that how it's done? Or is it after the fact that certain building owners are able to make an arrangement with you? Thank you.
The Honourable, the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And there were 3 or 4 questions in there, Mr. Chair, so I'll try and get the 3 or 4 of them all at once. And if I don't, certainly I would encourage my honourable colleague to ask me again. Yes, the rent supplement program is one whereby as a request for proposal, an RFP goes out per area. So it's not just at the whim of the developer. We do issue an RFP, and the RFP goes out. The federal dollars flow through to the developer now, and the provincial commitment is a 10-year commitment to ensure that the affordable rent is maintained. And the landlord is beholden to this agreement, and it guarantees that 10-year. One of the and we can always agree to have differences of opinions on philosophical programming. One of the points that I would like to make, one of the successes I've seen with some of these rent supplement agreements, if I could, Mr. Chair, to my colleague, one of the successes I've seen is the mixed housing, the mixed income levels, and the success that that has brought. And I know firsthand how important it is to ensure that that families, that children, that parents have that whole community environment. And so that's one of the successes that I've seen with the rent supplement program, because all of the units in a complex wouldn't necessarily be rent supplement, and so you'd have a variety of income levels and a variety of family situations, which I find to be a positive outcome from the rent supplement program, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yeah. I'd like to ask about the financial commitment then for the 70 units that would be rent supplements. Do you have a financial total that would attach itself to the 70 units, and we can go to the other types later, but I'd like to put a dollar figure behind 70 units under rent supplement. And because it's a 10-year commitment, do you have a total, an aggregate figure for the 10-year commitment that you make? I'm not sure. I know you have financial people with you today.
The Honourable the
Mr.
Minister
Chair.
of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, my extremely capable financial wizard is telling me that I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can certainly get a dollar figure for my honourable colleague, the commitment to date, and certainly what that projected commitment would be for the 10-year agreement.
The Honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to see that, because there's quite a difference in that kind of arrangement over, perhaps the rental preservation, where you would go in and really refurbish and rectify buildings that would be paid for in one given year and done. So it's a different kind of thing. And I do appreciate what the minister says about having people, I guess the choice between being in a public housing complex and being mixed into other communities, so that you have just a different nature of a community, I think, when you don't group people all together because they happen to be disadvantaged. That doesn't make for the best society. I would agree with that. So, certainly I think there's a lot of evidence that says that families do better. There's a better chance of escaping the cycle of poverty if you live in a community where there are other, people of all backgrounds together. I mean, the diversity and the economic and otherwise is helpful. And I think there's probably less crime and less danger and less negative influences if you have all people mixed together. So I know, again, you also run into troubles in integrating. Sometimes in some neighborhoods they may not welcome that, but I think we do need to have a broader understanding that it's in everyone's best interest. For all of us, we all live in the same society, right? Whether we're in a neighborhood that has a stigma or not, and that should be in all of our best interests. So I like that idea, but I am concerned about that model where we're doing something that might be of short-term benefit to the province. So I would like to know what kind of investment we have to make to get 70 units of subsidized rent. The other question I have is, for the families that live in those subsidized rents, what is the income cutoff for receiving assistance to go in there? And how many people? There's only 70 units. Do you have others that are in play that were not part of this Canada-Nova Scotia agreement? Are there throughout the province, are there more than 70 families that are able to benefit, or is it only through the Canada-Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Program?
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And we have, other than the 70 units, we do have other programs that rent supplement program. So on page 4.7, I would draw my honourable colleague's attention to 2.6 million rent supplement program. So that we do have an existing program now. And yes, as with all of our programs, Mr. Chair, those are income tested, and so they do have household income limits attached to them, Mr. Chair. Get those exact household income limits for my honourable colleague as soon as I can, perhaps by the end of this dialogue.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yes, it says here, again, going to the new rental, I'm actually very surprised, I should say, that these are all available, these units, and there's only 85 that are outstanding, because the last time it was at public accounts, there was a huge number outstanding and very few that had been built or made available. I think other members of the House may remember that in the discussion we had at public accounts. So I am curious, are the 547 units you refer to that are new actually built? You said they are built and available. And will they be available this year if they're under construction? Because the program was off to a tremendously slow and unwieldy start. Nothing had happened for several years, except that the number had gone from 1,500 down to about 800, as I recall, where we left it. And now today it's up to over 1,000 again, but it had really been significantly pared down in terms of the impact, and the progress had been very slow in the initial few years. So could you tell me about those 547 new units?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Where are my units? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Couple of things. The household income limits, I can provide a chart for my honourable colleague at the end of our discussion that I would table for her to reference. And to not mislead my honourable colleague, the new rental per region, 38 in the Cape Breton region, 138 in the northern, 139 in the central, and 232 in the western. So 547 units that have been completed or are under construction. And so we have allocated those dollars and we're moving the projects. There are occasions when the contractors or the developers the monies have been secured, but because of various challenges they have, the projects haven't been completed. But those 547 are either completed or under construction. The other 85 that I mentioned are in the planning stage. So I didn't mean to mislead my honourable colleague. Those are in the planning stage, and we would be moving forward with those again in partnership with our developers, understanding that all of our dollars will be out the door by the end of fiscal 08-09.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you. I'd like to find out a little bit about the nature of these new rental units. They're clearly not in public housing areas. They're I would imagine, empty lots that have been developed in different neighborhoods. Number one, can you tell me how many are in HRM? And secondly, can you confirm that they're not grouped together, that they're spread throughout not the province, but throughout communities? And are they, again, dependent upon developers building it on your behalf? Are they dependent upon calls for proposals where these new rental units will go?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And in the central region, which would be the HRM, we have 4 regions in the department. So in the central region, there are 139 new rentals. I do not have the list at my fingertips where each of those 139 are. Again, I will ask staff to provide those addresses to my honourable colleague. Of course, we don't. We wouldn't want, for privacy reasons, to issue every street and civic number, but I will provide that list certainly to my honourable colleague for her information. Whether or not they're all together, they wouldn't all be lumped together because, of course, this encompasses the entire central region. So we will make sure that we get those exact locations to my colleague.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Yeah, my question around this would be, I have seen some of the announcements where the minister has been to an area, new buildings opened. There was one in Fairview not very long ago that I believe you attended perhaps with your husband. I may say so, Mr. Chair. But what I'm wondering about is, would that building be dedicated forever to low-income housing? Is it privately owned by someone else, and has it been built, again, because federal money went in to help build it and because provincial money helped the builder? So is it done by RFP where you decide to go? And is it forever? Would those buildings be protected as low-income housing or affordable housing?
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
I'll clarify that. But, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yes, it was a pleasure to be in Fairview with my colleague from Halifax Fairview, if that's the name of his constituency, I believe. Yes, and our federal counterparts and the developers, because that one, and I'm not going to take my honourable colleague's time to talk about the success of that project, but it really was a phenomenal success story because they used some amazing technology when it came to geothermal. They used amazing technology when it came to energy efficiency. All of the units are accessible. Not all of them are accessible to visitors, and indeed they had specific units that were completely accessible for their residents. And so it really was a success story. And the family themselves, the developers who were the family, were a tremendous group to work with. So, sorry to digress, Mr. Chair, but I did want to make that reference. And yes, they are all done by RFP, and they're done by area. And so the regional administrators and the provincial coordination look at the stock that's available, look at what needs to be new rental or what needs to be preservation, or which component of our menu would best fit that area. And in the and so the RFP is done by area, and I will get confirmation, but I believe I'm getting the nod that we believe it's for 15 years that they're kept with that agreement, but I will get confirmation. I wouldn't want to mislead my honourable colleague. I'll get confirmation of that for her.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to ask a couple of questions around second stage housing. Again, being a Metro member and representing Halifax Clayton Park, I am really concerned about affordable housing. And again, my area has a mix of housing, but we don't have enough affordable housing in Clayton Park, and I believe the costs are getting very high. So there's a lot of issues around that. I'm glad we've touched on some of them. There's certainly a great deal to know in every segment of your department. But second stage housing was what I mentioned, and that is because I have a great deal of interest in the whole gamut of issues that face women, women in domestic violence, how we can help women who have faced, any kind of domestic or other violence, how we can help them to reestablish in the community. And the evidence is clear that we need longer-term supports, and that it's definitely important that we have transition houses and a safe refuge. But those have a limited period of time where the women can stay, and I believe too often the families are almost forced to return to a home situation that is not safe, because they don't have the long-term support to get just the counseling and the life skills and the employment skills necessary to reestablish themselves. So we need more second stage housing in the province. I believe Alice Housing is the largest in Eastern Canada, and you may know the exact number, but it's still not, it's double digit, but it's not 100 units that they have under their management. We need literally, several hundred, I would say, in the province right now. And I'm wondering if you have any plans on second stage housing that will help to provide more stability and frankly, more success for the other programs that you administer.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I welcome the opportunity to have this dialogue. And I know that the complexity of the issues around second stage housing and second stage residency is indeed, it goes directly to the point that my honourable colleague made in her very end remark, in that the other programs that we have in place are part and parcel, key components, but are out there in a void without that second stage housing. And so I bring up the success of SHIM in an acknowledgement, and the program over in Dartmouth is really what I think to be one of those opportunities where we looked outside the box. We found an opportunity with the federal government to create housing for young single mothers who then were able to avail themselves to those other programs that we have in place to ensure that they get the resources and the services that are available in the community while they're in a safe environment and an environment that allows them to gain that independence and that self-confidence they so desperately need. And so I know that there are some restrictions that they can stay for up to 2 years. They have to take part in other programming, and there's an age requirement there as well. And so I think we use that type of a program to show the example of how we are committed. That program was funded through the federal government. We support it through our per diems and through our funding, the same way that we do support Alice Housing. And so to the question, the specific question of my honourable colleague, is it something we're looking at? Absolutely. Is it something I think we need to do more of? Absolutely. The key is making sure that we do it in partnership with those other programs and services, because the housing alone is not enough. It has to be in partnership with the programs that are in place by the women's centres, by the transition houses, all of those other groups.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Can the minister tell me how many second stage housing units in the province that you support or help to? It wouldn't be entirely supported, but you know, that you give some assistance to. I think it's worthwhile while the minister looks for that to make note of the fact that every one of the organizations, not just serving women, but you know, really serving our community, all of them are so hard pressed to do fundraising on their own in order to make ends meet. And about 2 weeks ago, I was at an Alice Housing event, an art auction evening, which they do.
Order, please. Order. Order, please. It's a little noisy in the chamber. I can't hear the honourable member speaking, so I would ask some of the conversations to be lowered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's very much the case with all of these organizations that they spend a large amount of their time and their board's time trying to raise money and make up the shortfall in per diems, which have not risen for a long time and which really aren't in line with what the costs are to provide that shelter for people. And as I say, I just feel that the pressure and the expectations that we have for those